Welcome to Wisdom Woman podcast. I believe that is in constant change and growth, not in perfection, that we find happiness. In this podcast, I'm going to be talking with top performance professionals about tools, techniques, new ideas on how to develop your communication skills, use your creative thinking, be a team player, manage your tasks like a pro, be motivated, become an expert on relationships, and a problem solver. Everything you need to be 5 stars in all areas of your life. My intention is to help you develop your skills and find balance between your professional and personal life. My name is Betina Pflug, and I hope I can be your trusted advisor. Welcome to Wisdom Woman, the podcast where we dive deep into empowering conversations with remarkable women who are making a difference in their field. I'm your host, Betina Pflug, and in today's episode, we will explore the fascinating topic of imposter syndrome and how to overcome it. Join us with Sydney Jackson-Clockston, the founder of Citrine Unlimited and an expert in leadership, empowerment, and entrepreneurship. Sydney's innovative approach and extensive certification makes her the perfect guest to shed light onto this important subject. We have here not only Sydney, but Bonnie and Clyde, their dogs, to spend some time and explain all about her book. She just launched an amazing book called My Own Worst Enemy, Understanding and Overcoming Imposter Syndrome. We both work for Consultants for Good. That's an organization who helps nonprofits, and that's how we met. And when I knew that she wrote a book about it, I felt so excited about bringing this topic because a lot of my coaching clients are expats that are trying to thrive in a new country. So her knowledge can help us so much to feel more confident, to brave the wilderness, and really show the best out of us. So Sydney, welcome to our podcast. I'm so excited you're here with us today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me and for inviting my fur babies to join. My doggos, thank you.
Oh, they're so cute. And my dog just flew from California to Australia last week. And
Oh,
she's in
wow.
Sydney now. Yes, waiting 10 days. I'm so excited.
Does she
One
have a
week,
does she have a passport?
kind of. It's so hard to bring animals to Australia. And I'm going to be able to see her after 6 months. I can't believe it. So having your dogs, Bonnie and Clyde, here with us today, it's so good. Therapy dog is the best therapy we can ever have.
Yes, I totally agree with you. Wow, I didn't realize you had to wait a whole 6 months. I'm sure she misses you and is excited to see you soon.
Oh, I'm going to post a video soon on social media. I'm going to share with you.
Okay, I want to see.
So, can you explain what imposter syndrome is and why it affects so many individuals?
Yeah, so imposter syndrome, it's a psychological phenomenon. Okay, so it's something that um, just naturally can occur for people. And a lot of times it gets described as feeling like a fraud, even if you are successful, right? And you've worked really hard in life and you have accomplishments. Maybe you feel like, ooh, is this real? Like, do I deserve this? Do I deserve to be in the position I'm at? Or, um, do I belong in this space? Are they going to find out that I don't belong here? And it's always kind of having this thought in the back of your head that you're not enough or it's just not enough. Um, and it can show up in so many different ways for folks, but that in a nutshell is what imposter syndrome is.
And what are some common signs or indicators of the imposter syndrome for you to know that you're having this kind of problem to face?
Yeah, so imposter syndrome, it shows up in several different ways. A couple of them is one that's really well known, which is perfectionism. That actually can be a side effect of imposter syndrome. A lot of people don't realize that. And so that could be that person that feels like they have to be perfect at every single thing, right? and there's no room for error, no room to be human, right? Remember, we're humans, we're not robots. Even robots have breakdowns sometimes, right? So yeah, right. So perfectionism is one of the ways that imposter syndrome can show up, and it's actually a symptom of it. Also, there's folks who feel like they need to be the expert in everything. So that might be the individual who's like, okay, I want to start a business, right? But I just don't know enough. So until I take 15 different classes and I have all of these different certificates, and I'm just not going to be able to start a business. Or they could be that person that constantly stays in school, and there's nothing wrong with continuing to seek education. I want to make that clear, but it's just like it's never enough for them to get started. They feel like they just don't have enough knowledge. So that's one way too. Or it's that superstar person, right? So they might not necessarily be a perfectionist or need to have all of the knowledge, but they're that person that, especially when it comes to work, they'll be the first person at work and the last person to leave, and they'll cancel their plans with their family and friends to make sure that everything at work happens, right? To show their worth that way. But then they're really missing out on some of those important social aspects of being in community, being with family, having a hobby. So those are some of the ways that imposter syndrome can show up for people. Um, Commonly. There's tons of other ways too. Everybody's a different human being, but those seem to be some of the big ones that pop up.
And how does the imposter syndrome manifest in different areas, like such as relationship and personal goals, your personal life?
Yeah, that's really great. It really can pop up. I see a lot of folks in the workspace. I already gave some of those examples geared towards work, right? Where it's like, okay, I'm in the first year, my coworkers need help. I'm going to help them, but on top of it, I have all of my own work to do too. Or if you need something done right, you might as well do it yourself. I know here in the US, that's a big um, comment that goes around, right? Like if you need something done, do it yourself. Don't rely on other people. And so that makes people feel like they need to be more individualized, um, instead of being community, right? And so at work, that's how it shows up. With family and friends, it could manifest very similarly. Like, for example, if you like doing different projects and folks want to jump in and support you or help you, you might be like, no, like, do you think I'm not capable of doing this? Like, how dare you ask me? I got it. I'm good. And they just were trying to offer support. They didn't mean anything negative around wanting to support you. So kind of that frustration with getting support from family and friends when they see that maybe you could use some help, or maybe they just wanted to see if you wanted some support. um and it can really impact your relationships with folks, especially your friends and family, because you tend to become more of an individual, like I had said before, than spread out and work in the community, really be a part of a community.
And what is the underlying causes or triggers of imposter syndrome?
Oh man, well, it varies. So a lot of folks who have imposter syndrome, like myself, I have imposter syndrome at some point, and it usually can start in childhood. Someone said to me, for example, I'm dyslexic, right? And when I was in elementary school, I loved school, loved it, right? I loved going to school. I always did my homework. It was just something I enjoyed. But when I got to about third grade, I started failing all of my spelling tests. That was the only subject where I wasn't doing too great. And I would come home and I would study for hours till there were tears in my eyes. And I was like 8, right? At the time, 8 years old, experiencing this. And my mom knew something wasn't right. She didn't know what was going on, but she's like, something's not right. So she asked a couple of my teachers, like, what do you think's going on? And they're like, oh, she's just lazy. That was the label that I got. She's just lazy in this area. She's really gifted in everything else. She just doesn't want to do it. And my mom was like, no, I'm spending hours with her studying spelling. Like, I'm there with her. I know she's not lazy. It's just something's not right. Like, something's not connecting. So finally, thank God I had a teacher. And in the US, in certain states, they're not supposed to share about learning disabilities. It's a very weird system, but this teacher did it anyway. And I was able to get testing, and they found out I had dyslexia. So it wasn't that I was lazy, it was that I had a learning disability and I
Mm-hmm.
just could not do it. And so things like that, instances like that, where you get labeled or you don't fit into this box or you don't fit into a mold, those instances can really fuel imposter syndrome. And then once you have the outside world telling you you can't do something, or you're not this enough, or you're not qualified for this, or you get that rejection letter or whatever it may be, a lot of times our minds can start doing a lot of negative talk, and we almost become our own, I say co-conspirator, right? We become that person that starts to lock ourselves in and start to say, oh my gosh, I can't do this, I'm not good enough. And we really start to believe that lie. And so that's really how imposter syndrome can get triggered for a lot of folks, is we're just not fitting into the standardized norm for whatever culture we're in or whatever environment we're in. And because of that, then it might feel like, well, we're not good enough to be there or be in that space.
Yeah, I agree with you. And we were talking about how challenging it is for someone to migrate from another country and prove that they're good enough, that they can speak the language. For myself, it was really hard when I moved the first time from Brazil to United States, and having English as my third language. So hard to express yourself with the wisdom that you have. I look like a 8-year-old kid talking when I arrived there. So can you just bring your point of view on how these pets face this imposter syndrome and how
Oh,
this
yeah.
can impact their performance as an executive or an entrepreneur?
Yeah, most definitely. So I know for a lot of expats, the language piece, that's a big piece. I speak to a lot of folks coming from different cultures, different areas, especially from other countries, and oftentimes language does come up. And I've had so many people apologize to me. I'm so sorry, my English. And I'm like, you're amazing. Like, you just told me you speak 3 languages. That is amazing. I only speak 1, right? But the problem is, no, really, right? Like, that is so amazing. You speak 8 languages. You have an accent. Like, that is so cool. But a lot of times what happens is that a lot of folks don't have grace and don't have understanding, and really are like frustrated if you don't automatically just fit into their world and what they expect from you. And so that causes a lot of doubt, a lot of shame, a lot of frustration, a lot of feelings and emotions. And so that can cause a lot of folks, especially if you're an expat moving to a new space, a lot of doubt and like, can I do this? Can I be here? I know earlier we talked about folks moving, and sometimes they move to a country and their profession that they were doing, they can't even do anymore. How frustrating is that, right? You were a doctor or a lawyer in one country, and then you have to move. And because you don't have the credentials there, you don't qualify to do that anymore. And so then you're stuck doing a profession because you have to make money, you have to survive. That's not something you're passionate about or trained in. That itself is like forcing you into this space of, oh, well, like, who am I? Am I really who I thought I was? All these questions come up. All of this self-doubt starts to come up for a lot of folks. A lot of frustration can happen. So imposter syndrome can really impact folks who are expats too. And I like to tell folks, and I should have said this at the beginning, imposter syndrome often feels like being that new kid at school. So a lot of people experience imposter syndrome, right? You know, that first day at school and you're like, oh, like, do I belong here? Or that first day at a new job, right? Ooh, am I like, do I belong here? Did they really mean to hire me? Do I fit in here? You have all these questions. But the problem with imposter syndrome is that, especially if it's chronic, it just stays with you. That like new kid feeling, right? That new person at work feeling never really goes away. And so you have to do a lot of work through coaching, maybe even through some therapy to work through a lot of those negative thoughts and self doubt because you're holding yourself back.
Yeah, so a lot of my coaching clients with lack of confidence, but for sure they have the imposter syndrome. That's why they keep studying, preparing. They're never ready to launch their project instead of just taking the first step and facing the challenges. Can
Mm-hmm.
you share any personal experience or stories related to imposter syndrome that you saw?
Yeah. So, um, you know, I do work with some entrepreneurs too. And actually, right now, I'm working with an individual where him and his family had two successful businesses in Ukraine and they had to leave because of the war and they lost everything. They had just opened their second business and put all of their money into the second business and had to leave the country. And so, you know, working with this individual and seeing the process that they've had to go through with not only learning a new language, but also having to figure out, okay, how am I going to now become a business owner here in this new space? Has been really interesting, especially when it comes to building confidence, right? Because this person will often tell me, well, you know, I definitely know how to run a restaurant, but I'm here working with you because I just don't know how to do it here. Like I don't know the system here. I don't know the culture here, right? I don't know how people work, how to build the business here. And so I think it's really important when people work with you that they're getting that support to say, no, you can't do this. Like, this is what the system's like here. This is what the culture is like here. Let's take it one step at a time to relearn some of the things, but you can do it. And having that accountability, but also that encouragement that to keep moving forward. So that's been one of the most recent examples that I've had um, with an entrepreneur, especially someone who is from another country, an expat, and had to pretty much forcibly leave their country for safety and security.
I would like to share my story as well, how hard it was for me when I arrived in the United States. I was feeling this imposter syndrome when trying to communicate. I didn't sound like a smart person and said, what can I do to improve my English? Then I attended to a small business development center training about podcasting. I saw everything the teacher was explaining, and it wasn't that complicated. I knew about technology. I had all the equipments at my house. I have all the ideas. Said, why not starting a podcast? Yeah, that could be a good way to learn English. I just have to study the questions. I have to study the topic and just recorded it. And if I do any mistakes, I just cut it. That's so simple. But it took a lot of time, to prepare, to learn. This teacher was amazing. He kind of hold my hand. Franklin Togart, he's an amazing teacher. And I just started my first podcast, Wisdom for Nonprofits. Like you, Sydney, I'm a passionate about nonprofits, and I just starting to meet people who did a difference in this field. I asked if they can talk with me. I prepared like for 2-3 hours the session, did the questions, and just enjoy it. This was a way for me to amplify my vocabulary, and I enjoy it so much. So I had the imposter syndrome at the beginning, but I decided to face it. That's my story.
Well, no, I'm so happy you shared that. And, you know, I really appreciate the fact that you said so many key pieces to how someone can start to overcome imposter syndrome, right? Like you had this fear of, you know, okay, I don't know this other language. Oh my gosh, I don't sound educated. You in your head, you felt like you didn't sound educated. Um,
Mm-hmm.
or to the ability, which I'm sure was very frustrating to be able to speak to the level that you wanted to speak at, right? But then you also got support. And I think that's the key piece here is that imposter syndrome causes a lot of shame for folks. And when we're in shame as human beings, usually we won't say anything, right? Usually we keep it to ourselves when we're experiencing shame. I mean, who wants to share that with somebody, right? But
Yeah.
the thing is that with imposter syndrome, it is so important to speak with someone you trust. I mentioned earlier, whether that's a coach, a therapist, even a friend that you can trust, right? Someone who's understanding, who you know would listen to you. It's important to share it because once you actually speak and share, you're releasing the power that the shame has over you. And then you can actually start focusing on and having a plan, whatever it is, to keep moving forward. And that's the other thing about imposter syndrome. It will keep you stuck in an area and feeling like, okay, I can't move anywhere. And once you break through that shame, you start to gain traction. You know, look at it. How many episodes have you done of this amazing podcast?
Yeah, I'm so excited. My goal is to get to hundreds. I'm on the 27, but I'm going.
That's amazing, right? You're already over a quarter of the way there.
And it's so incredible. I just do it for passion. And when I see the numbers going like 8,000 people listen to me, I can't believe it.
Yeah,
I can't believe it.
I can, because you're pretty amazing. That's, I mean, and that's the thing too. I wish more folks understood what imposter syndrome was and took some time to really face it, because it is scary and you do have to face it because you're looking at yourself in the mirror, because there are so many people out there who are talented, right? Who really can make a difference in the world if they weren't holding themselves back. So yeah.
And how does the imposter syndrome impact like the confidence, the self-esteem, and the overall well-being in your point of view?
Oh man. So imposter syndrome, you know, there's different types of mindset. There's, you know, fixed mindset. And I know this isn't necessarily a mindset talk, but I just want folks to have some background, right? So fixed mindset, what that really looks like is woe is me. It's more of that woe is me, like, oh man, life sucks. I can't do anything about it. I have no control. That's where imposter syndrome lives, right? It's like, this is just the way it is. Bad things always happen to me. I'm not going to get anywhere. Right. And even the energy behind that's very much like blah, right? But when
Mm-hmm.
you look at like a growth mindset, when you start to break free from imposter syndrome, that's a lot of the, oh, I can do this. Okay, I this challenge happened, but how am I going to get past this challenge, right? How am I going to deal with it and keep moving forward? So you start really expanding yourself. You start growing, new opportunities happen. Just like how you started your podcast, right? You've gotten to meet, I'm sure, amazing individuals. I mean, you and I are having this really cool conversation. Like you said,
Mm-hmm.
the numbers started growing and people listening and viewing your podcast, right? So you're making an impact in the world that when you, before you started your podcast, I'm sure you probably had no idea what it was going to look like and what kind of impact it can make, or if it was going to make a difference. And you truly are making a difference. So all of that to say is that imposter syndrome really can make your mindset go to a darker place where you're not experiencing a lot of growth and you're holding yourself back from opportunities. When you start to work on it and you start to push through and figure out, okay, how am I going to get beyond this feeling of I'm not enough, you know, I'm inadequate, I'm a failure, I'm a fraud, that's when you really start to experience a lot of growth and you really start to see the difference you're making with the impact you have on others. And sometimes that might not be an impact with reaching 8,000 plus people, I'm sure you'll be in the millions one day. I'm putting that out there, right? But you could just be at home, right? We all, as human beings, we're leaders in our own homes. That's where leadership starts, in my opinion, is at home with our partners, with our kids, with our family members, with our friends. And so it really is how you can show up too for yourself and for the other people that are important to you in your life at home. And then it affects everything else at work and in your hobbies and all those other things.
And what are some effective strategies for recognizing and combating the imposter syndrome?
Yeah, so I list in my book a couple of strategies, but one of the biggest ones that I always tell people to think about is reframing. And it's not like a secret. Reframing's been out there for a long time. It takes time to get to the point to where you could just do it in your head. But what reframing looks like is you have a negative thought, right? Your brain's starting down that, oh, I can't do this. Oh, I shouldn't apply for this job. Oh, I shouldn't do this new thing, whatever it is. As soon as you start having that negative thought, stop yourself. And when I first started to learn to reframe, I literally would have to go to the bathroom. Like I'd be in public at work or somewhere. And I'd have to go to the bathroom and like talk to myself and give myself a pep talk and say like, you know what? No, like this is not true. Is what I'm saying true? Like, do I really feel like I'm a loser? Why are you talking to yourself that way? Would you say that even to your dog? Like sometimes we talk to ourselves so badly. Really? Like I don't go around telling Bonnie and Clyde, listen here, you losers. Like, you guys suck, right? I don't do
Look
that.
your belly. You have a fat belly. We never say this to it.
Literally, like you fatty. Like, I don't do that to my own dog. So why do I do that to myself? Right?
Oh my gosh, that's so true.
Yeah. So that's why I tell people start reframing. If you say, oh, I'm so fat, right? I'm disgusting. Okay, well, let's stop that. Why don't we say, no, I have a body that carries me. I love my body because it keeps me nourished. It wakes me up every day. I'm able to walk, or I'm able to go outside, or I'm able to, listen to music, or, my body allows me to go swimming or whatever. There's positive ways to talk about yourself, whatever it is. I'm grateful, and gratitude is a big piece too to reframing as well. I'm grateful to be in this space, and because of my body, I'm able to do X, Y, and Z. For me personally, I'm able to be on this podcast right now because my body allowed me to take a nap for 20 minutes before this and then wake up refreshed and ready to go.
Wow.
So,
yeah.
so
Reframing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And how can individuals develop a healthy mindset to overcome, the self-doubt associated with imposter syndrome?
Well, to develop a healthy mindset, like I said, the reframing leads to a healthy mindset. Also be mindful of what you're consuming. And so I tell a lot of folks that we live in a world that can and is scary, right? But it's very important to be mindful of what you're listening to and what you're reading and what you're watching. And I don't say that to say like I want folks to be ignorant to what's happening in the world. I think it's important for us to know about current events and what's happening. But I will tell you that one of the biggest things that helped me personally with my mindset was I stopped watching the local news and I started reading my news from, like the BBC and other places that were credible, because every time I turned on the news, it was always doom and gloom, right? Like, oh my God, the world's ending, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, freaked out. And so that kept me in a negative mindset too. And that was also fueling my imposter syndrome. And so I had to, and even social media. Oh, social media, don't get me started on it, right? I have a pre-tween, a pre-tween, I call them, at home. And, we're in the middle of body image issues, right? And wanting what other people have, and not, and so it's been having news and social media and limiting how much of that I'm consuming has really helped my mindset and has really kept me in a positive space. And so I recommend to other people to try it. Maybe go on a 1-day cleanse from social media if you're really addicted to it and you have to have your phone in your hand. Instead, put your phone down. I promise you'll be okay. If you're afraid that you'll get lost, put your ID in your pocket or something. And go on a walk without your phone. Like, even if you have to start slow and just go on a 15-minute walk without your phone, do it. You'll actually start to see things, right? Like, you'll actually be like, oh my gosh, that building, they just put that building up. Or, oh wow, like the air smells great, or the air smells gross, right? Or, oh, I never noticed that my neighbor has X, Y, and Z going on. So I think it's really important for us to take a step back from technology every once in a while, and really give ourselves some space to not panic, because a lot of the information we get is written or presented in a negative way.
I agree with you. And I think not only getting rid of comparing yourself to others, sometimes if you cannot get rid of this feeling of I need to compare myself, I truly believe we are the average of the 5 people we most spend time with. So try to find amazing people to surround you,
Yes.
and then try to be like them. So when I was struggling, starting as an entrepreneur in the United States, what I did, I just joined the Four Colonies Chamber and I started attending twice a week for a breakfast to get to know new entrepreneurs in the town and see what they were doing, what they were making to be successful. And then I compare myself to them. Oh, I can do that too. Oh, look what they're doing. They know marketing. I can do that too.
Yeah.
You can use this in a positive way, not just, in a negative way too.
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that. There's a quote that I like by Nipsey Hussle, who was a rapper and entrepreneur here in the US. And what he said is, look at your friends, and is your circle of friends, is it your cage, or is it uplifting you? I might be butchering that a little bit. But the whole point is, right, is your circle like empowering you, or is it your cage, right? Is it holding you back? And so I really appreciate you sharing that too, because that's huge.
Yeah, I saw a very fun quote on social media where the guy was saying, are your friends peeing on your fire or making your fire bigger?
Yeah.
People like to turn our fire off, and we need to find someone who really pushes us to inflame, to really shine bright.
Yes.
Can you discuss the role of resilience and self-compassion in combating imposter syndrome?
Sorry, can you pause for a second? Can you ask the question again?
Okay, let me do it again.
Here.
Can you discuss the role of resilience and self-compassion in combating imposter syndrome?
Yeah. So, human beings themselves were resilient. Like, if you think about it, the fact that how long, I don't even know. Sorry, I didn't study science. How long humans have been on this earth. But the fact that like our ancestors survived and now we're surviving to get to this point to where we're here today, that just is proof of resiliency in itself, right? So I think in general, as humans, we can be resilient if we allow ourselves to be. And a lot of that has to do with giving yourself grace and having self-compassion. So as humans, we make mistakes, and imposter syndrome is also one of those things where, like I said, it will keep you trapped in this like shame spiral But also too, some people reminisce, right? Like, okay, I messed up and I'm still thinking about it 15 years later, you know? And instead of like learning from that moment and taking the learning moment and moving on, you're stuck in that. And what's really sad is when you become stuck in things, then it's hard to really appreciate the present and also plan for the future and where you're going in the future and have openness for the future. So, all of that to say is that self compassion is really important. Giving yourself grace is really important, because you can beat up yourself pretty badly when you have imposter syndrome. But it's okay to just say, you know what, today I'm struggling and maybe tomorrow will be better. It's okay to say that sometimes. Or, I bombed. I did a really bad job at that speaking engagement, but you know what? That was a learning opportunity. I'm going to take that information that I got and I'm going to learn from it and apply it to how I can do better in the future, how I can be more engaging in the future. And maybe reach back out to the client and see how, I can support them in the future if they're not satisfied. Sometimes we beat ourselves up and other people are like, what are you talking about? Like, you did great. You were fine. So I think it's really important to be self-compassionate and to not be too hard on ourselves. And yeah, if we make mistakes, to own up to it. That's a part of being a good leader, right? Is owning up to mistakes, but learning from those mistakes and learning how to keep moving forward.
Yeah, you touch a very important point, is learning with our mistakes. I consider myself a very resilient person, but what was missing for me was I was doing mistakes, falling the floor, standing up again, and trying again. But I wasn't ready to listen from others' feedback when I come back
Uh,
again to come stronger. And I had really to had a help from a coach to get ready with my self-confidence to listen for sincere feedback. If you show your vulnerability to people and open yourself to listen a sincere feedback and process without feeling judged or without feeling a failure, just like, how can I grow with this information that I just received? And then this will make it easy the second time you do it. If you're just falling and standing up and trying again, falling, standing up and trying again without noticing the impact that you're having in others people, the impact you're having with your business, and asking for feedback, it will take a long time for you to grow. But you have to be ready to listen to the feedback, because sometimes it can hurt. But with this pain, you can become stronger. So I really encourage people to try to grow by listen. That's a very important thing that happened to me.
I totally agree. They can't see me shaking my head and smiling with what you're saying.
Uh-huh.
I totally agree.
And how do you think individuals can create a supportive environment for themselves and others in overcoming this imposter syndrome? Because you have to have sincere people around you, people who really care about you, to be able to open yourself for that. What do you suggest for them
Yeah.
to create a supportive?
Yeah. So, one of the biggest things that I would say in regards to creating a supportive environment is one, because, there are some folks, and we had mentioned this earlier, right? The whole idea of, are your friends peeing on your fire, or are they helping you build it, right? Um, it's really important to know who are those folks you can trust. And if there aren't people you can really trust, where can you find people to trust? And that can take a lot of vulnerability. And so I don't know about other countries, but I know here in the US, something that I did when I was starting to build my new community was something that you said you did. Even like, I joined a chamber of commerce as an entrepreneur, right? And I started to scope out, okay, who are the individuals where I feel like we can have a good conversation? Like, I would want to have coffee with this person. And we would go for coffee, and we would start having genuine conversations. I also belong to a group called Women in Sustainability, right? Because that's an affinity that I have. That's something I'm into, right? Is sustainability work. And so even finding folks within that group where I'm like, you know what, I really like you. We could have coffee. And that's where I started, was just by having a simple 30-minute to an hour coffee with someone to see if we could build a friendship from it. And then after that, once we became friends, that's when I felt like, okay, our relationship's based off of authenticity, right? Me showing up as myself, and I'm not getting judged by you because I'm showing up as myself. And we can be open and honest with one another and not have judgment. And I can trust that you're not going to go out there and share my business with other people. Oh, Sydney said blah, 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 blah. And can you believe she did da, 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 da? You know what I mean? So it took time and it took some vulnerability. But I really encourage people to find a way to do it. I know we also have here meetups. I don't know if meetups exist everywhere where all of your listeners are.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah. So like doing like meetups. I've even seen some people, through like Facebook groups or things like that, find folks they have commonalities with that they can do virtual conversations with. Um, so I feel like that's one way. And then, I'm a mental health normalizer, so I'm always going to say it, but finding a good therapy, maybe it's like some sort of group therapy where everybody's there for a specific reason, and you could talk with all of the folks and know that you could trust that it stays private. Or finding a coach like yourself, and especially if that coach has like a group coaching program, that can be really nice too, because those folks have something in common with you usually, and they're interested in having conversation with you around similar topics, or being supportive at least of whatever's going on.
Great advices, yes. And are there any specific practice or exercise you suggest to the self belief and overcoming this feeling?
Yeah, so like I had mentioned, reframing, that's a huge one. Also too, I would highly suggest that you also look at turning I know a lot of folks who have imposter syndrome love to-do lists. I love to-do lists. Not everybody, but I love to-do lists. And so a tool that I learned a while ago is to turn your to-do list into a to-da list, right? So what that does in your brain is it starts to rewire you from I should be doing this, right? Like, oh, I should be doing this. I should be doing that, and turning it almost into a reward. So every time you finish something, you're like, ta-da, I got it done. Because what would happen is sometimes when we create these long lists of things, we'll beat ourselves up if we don't finish them, right? And sometimes our
Yeah.
lists are way too long anyway. But it's really nice when you can change that instead of saying, well, shoot, I had a list of 20 things and I only finished 18. I'm a failure. Switching that around in our brains to say, you know what? I had a list of 20 things and ta-da, I finished 18 of them. Like, whoa, that's great. What a great day. So there's just a difference sometimes in presentation of things and how you can start to rewire your brain to think of things more positively than negatively.
I love that. Yes. Yeah, and you can set up some reward for each task as well. For example, after finishing write this chapter, I would get myself a chocolate. I don't know, just celebrating your wins every day is important, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, even the small ones, right? Like it doesn't have to be super, like you don't have to necessarily go spend a lot of money and, hop on an airplane and go somewhere. It can be something really simple. I know I like arcades here. I like pinball, and we have an arcade place nearby. So when I do something that I really like, I go and I play for, $1, $2 pinball. And that's how I reward myself. is just by doing something fun.
That's really nice. And in your experience, what are some long-term benefits individuals can gain for overcoming this imposter syndrome?
Sorry, can you repeat it? It cut out right when you're asking the question.
Okay. In your experience, what are some long-term benefits individuals can gain from overcoming the imposter syndrome?
Yeah. Oh man. So a couple of long-term benefits. I mean, well, a couple. I could list off a whole. I mean, just rattle off a whole list. I will say one of the biggest benefits is living a more fulfilled life. That's a huge one. Um, I don't know what people believe in, before, if you believe that we were something before we got here, if you believe in something after we pass away and leave here, whatever it is. All I can tell you right now is that we're here and now. That's what I can tell you, is that we are here and we're alive right at this moment. You're listening to this right here in this moment. And so it's really important for us to be fulfilled and happy if we can be, right? I know sometimes there are outside factors that are outside of our control, but even within whatever space we're in, if we can be happy and fulfilled and feel like, we've done our best and we're happy with that, that's huge. And so that's just the benefit of overcoming imposter syndrome, is that you really start to get into the space of being like, whoa, I can't believe I did that. Just like you were sharing with you starting your podcast, right? Like, whoa, can
Yeah.
you believe that in order to like start learning and growing, your language skills with English, you started a whole podcast, and that you've done so far almost 30 episodes and you've reached an audience of about 8,000. That's amazing. Like if you sit
Yeah.
and think about it, like I've gotten onto stages, and I've been to conferences and I've won contracts and things that I never thought I could have done. If you would have asked me 5 years ago if I would be right here, right now, talking to you, I would have been like, you're crazy. No. If you would have told me when I was a kid, even when I was an adult, I caught coworkers snickering behind my back about my spelling. If you would have told that person, that young adult who was in tears in the bathroom crying, that they would be an author who's written a full book, I would be like, you're nuts. That's not reality. That's not real. And so starting to overcome imposter syndrome has a lot of benefits to just your personal well-being and just being more satisfied in life. But also it can really impact the way you are. I'm very community based, the way you show up for others, the way that you, like you said earlier, shine for others, the way that you light the way for other people.
Yeah, you shine bright for sure. I admire you so much, Sydney. So
You
lastly, we're
too.
here at of our podcast. Where can the listeners find more resource or connect with you to learn further about overcoming imposter syndrome?
Yeah, so they could go to my website, citrineunlimited.com, and it is citrine like the stone, unlimited.com. And on there, they can gain access to um, some of my blog posts. I also do have information on my book and how to get a copy. They can email me if you would like a digital copy. I can make that possible as well. So that's the best way to get in contact with me, is directly through my website. And then, of course, I have social media too. So I have LinkedIn, Instagram, all of those options as well.
We're going to list all this on our description of the podcast. So keep tuned here. And I would love if you could share the program that you teach on as well. Can you explain a little bit what are you doing at the university? Is that in the
Yeah.
university?
Yeah, so I actually it's with a nonprofit organization here locally in Denver, and I work with them to work with entrepreneurs to teach entrepreneurship. So It's called Rocky Mountain Microfinance Institute. And what I do there is we make sure people have a viable business plan, and we get them mentorship. They get private mentorship. We go through a full financial projection workbook with them at a little to no cost. The average program costs about $75 because of funding that we get. Yeah, it's some people are like, this is a scam. Like, people told me it was a scam. And I'm like, no, this is real. Like, I promise you it's real. So we do all of that. And we do all of that with the goal to help people gain access to capital. Because a lot of folks who are in entrepreneurship, when they're starting up, they're bootstrapping. So this idea of, friends and family money, or you have to have savings. A traditional bank might not give you a loan, and not everybody has friends and family or savings to start a business with. So we do character-based lending based off of your character and your business plan at the end of the course. So yeah, that's what I do.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your time here with us. And remember, passion over perfection, people. Get into action today by visiting the Citrine Unlimited website. Grab a signed copy of My Own Worst Enemy, Understanding and Overcoming Imposter Syndrome from Sydney. Thank you so much for being here with us and sharing your journey. I really admire people like you that shines bright. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This was awesome. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Wisdom Woman Podcast. To hear past and future episodes, please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast channel. We appreciate your reviews. To give us suggestions for future show topics, please write to us at podcast@witchy.tech. If you're interested in having me as your trusted advisor, schedule a strategic coaching session on my website, www.witchy.tech.